You owe me 15 grand, pal.
In 1973, when the Paul Newman and Robert Redford movie titled The Sting came out in cinemas, it became a critical and commercial success as audiences flocked to see Paul Newman and Robert Redford reprise their on-screen camaraderie, as seen when the two legendary actors first appeared together on screen just 4 years earlier in the 1969 box office smash hit Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. While The Sting became a worldwide hit and would win the Academy Award for Best Film, it also did something else, even more lasting and legendary. It returned to prominence the long-forgotten king of ragtime and America's first great musical talent and superstar, with the music that could be heard right from the beginning of the Oscar-winning film. Born sometime around June 1868 in Texarkana, Texas, to Giles Joplin and Florence Givens, Scott Joplin was the second of 6 children born into a musical family. His father Giles worked as a railroad laborer and sang at plantation parties, while his mom Florence was a cleaner who sang and played the banjo in her free time. He was taught music by his family, and by age 7 he was allowed to play the piano while his mother cleaned. In the 1880s, a young Scott Joplin left Texarkana to become a traveling musician to look for opportunities for a black pianist. In 1893, he went to the World's Fair held in Chicago, and whilst the involvement of African Americans at the fair was heavily restricted, he formed a band and helped introduce ragtime music to the 27 million attendees so that by 1897 it would become a national craze in America. There was scant opportunity for black pianists to work in late 19th century, early 20th century America, and Scott Joplin could only find work at black clubs and red light districts outside of the occasional tutoring as he moved from Chicago to Sedalia, Missouri, and then to St. Louis. It was in St. Louis that Scott Joplin produced some of his greatest works, including The Entertainer, the piece of music heard at the very beginning of The Sting. He would also lose his only child, a daughter, in 1903 whilst she was a baby, as well as his first wife following that tragic loss. In 1907, Joplin moved to New York to find a producer for the opera he was writing, Tremonisha. Unable to find one, he undertook the financial burden of publishing the opera himself, with disastrous consequences, as art music as a field was closed to African Americans. Tremonisha would go unnoticed after it was first published in 1911 for another 60 years, leading to a breakdown in health for the African American pioneer. In 1916, Scott Joplin would develop tertiary syphilis and died at the age of 48 in 1917, buried in a poor man's grave that will remain unmarked for 57 years. The music and life of Scott Joplin would be largely forgotten until the 1970s, when his musical legacy would be brought back to public consciousness, with The Sting winning the Academy Award for Best Original Song Score in 1974. Tremonisha, the opera written by Scott Joplin in 1911 that went unnoticed and unreviewed, would get a full theatrical staging on Broadway in 1975, winning a Pulitzer Prize for the long-dead composer in 1976. Of course, Scott Joplin never got to see all the adulation his music would get, nor its long-lasting influence on film, music, and even television programs like The Simpsons, Tom and Jerry, and Sesame Street. I started this tribute with his music as heard at the beginning of the great Oscar-winning film, The Sting. So it's only fitting that I end this by again playing music of his, only this time from the ending of another Academy Award-winning film released 35 years after. The plot to The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, starring Brad Pitt and Cate Blanchett, coincidentally opens in 1918, a year after Scott Joplin dies. But as the film gets to its haunting ending, the music playing in the background is Scott Joplin's Bethina, dedicated to the memory of his second wife, Freddie Alexander, who tragically died only 10 weeks after they were married.